Welcome to Window to Faith.
Ever feel like there's a disconnect between the you everyone sees and the you know is inside?
Mm-hmm.
Today's deep dive, it's going to resonate, I think,
Right.
because we're unpacking this sermon from Andrew Wommack
Okay.
about the Christian concept of spirit, soul, and body. And get this,
Okay.
how it impacts your view of yourself
Yeah.
and even your ability to heal.
Interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating how this model, even if you're not coming from a religious background,
Right.
offers a different perspective on human consciousness.
Totally. So Womack's big thing is this. Humans aren't just body and soul.
Right.
There's this third, often overlooked element,
Yeah.
the spirit.
Right.
And that's where your real self, your true essence, hangs out.
Yeah. And he doesn't mean that in some vague, mystical way. He compares the spirit to a nuclear reactor inside you.
Whoa.
Capable of amazing things, but most folks haven't learned how to tap into it.
Okay, so how does he explain this whole spirit, soul, body thing in a way that makes sense?
Well, he uses the analogy of an iceberg.
Okay.
People see your actions, your emotions. That's just the tip,
Mm.
the soul and body doing their thing. But below the surface, that vast unseen part, that's your spirit.
So you're not defined by your outward actions or even your emotions.
Yeah.
Your true potential lies in tapping into that vast reservoir within your spirit.
Powerful.
Powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not even aware of it most of the time, how do we know it's even there?
That's where things get really interesting. He argues that even in the natural world, we accept things we can't physically see,
Right.
like germs or radio waves. Right? Just because we don't have spiritual senses yet doesn't mean the spirit isn't real and influencing our lives.
That makes sense. We don't doubt the existence of Wi-Fi just because we can't see the signal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he says the Bible acts as a mirror for the spirit,
Okay.
just like a regular mirror reflects our physical body.
We wouldn't doubt our reflection in a mirror just because we didn't feel like it was accurate that day.
Right.
We trust the mirror. So applying that to the Bible, reflecting our spiritual state,
Mm-hmm.
helps to understand why our feelings can be deceiving.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this is where it gets even more intriguing.
Okay.
He dives into the heart,
Okay.
saying it's not just an organ or a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but the intersection of our spirit and soul.
Okay.
He's talking about our mind and emotions.
So it's not about blind faith, but aligning your mind and emotions with the truths you find in your spirit
Right.
through the Word.
Yes.
It's like tuning a radio to the right frequency.
Mm-hmm.
But what's wild is he says this isn't about trying harder to be good in the traditional sense.
Right. He draws a sharp contrast between
Yeah.
the Old and New Testament approaches to spiritual growth. He says the old way was all about restraining the flesh, like
Yeah.
trying to hold back a wild animal with willpower alone.
Exhausting and, let's be honest, not
Right.
very effective long term.
Exactly. But Wommack says the New Testament flips the script.
Okay.
It's about renewal. Letting your renewed spirit, empowered by Christ, take the lead.
Okay, so what does renewed spirit actually mean? How do you even begin to do that?
Think of it like this. It's not about denying our humanness, but about tapping into this source of strength within us. He uses the analogy of training a powerful but unruly dog. You don't just chain it up.
Right,
You teach it, you guide it, so it reaches its full potential.
right.
That's the renewal he's talking about.
So it's an active process, not passive.
Mhm.
It's not about waiting for God to zap us with power,
Mhm.
but taking responsibility for aligning our thoughts and actions with this already powerful spirit.
Exactly.
Yes.
And this is where practices like studying the Bible, prayer,
Mm.
and surrounding yourself with a supportive community come in.
Right.
They help rewire our thinking and connect with that spiritual core. It's like learning a new skill.
Mm.
You don't wake up one day a piano virtuoso.
Right.
It takes practice.
Speaking of transformation, Womack shares an incredible story about a student named Mike who experienced a remarkable healing.
Ah, yes. This is where things get really powerful.
Yes.
Mike had this massive tumor on his chest
Okay.
for 8 years.
8 years.
It got so bad, his wife had to help him hold his head up just to eat.
Wow. I can't imagine the toll that takes, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually.
Absolutely. But here's the amazing part.
Okay.
Despite his circumstances, Mike stumbled upon this teaching about the Spirit's power
Okay.
and had a complete paradigm shift.
It's like he finally got a glimpse of himself through God's eyes, not just through the lens of his circumstance.
Exactly. He went from feeling like a victim to realizing he had agency,
Right.
that he could choose to align himself with the truth of his already healed spirit,
Okay.
even if his physical reality hadn't caught up yet.
Okay, now that is a powerful mindset shift.
Yeah.
But how did that actually play out in his life?
Mike dove headfirst into the Word,
Ah.
meditating on scriptures about healing and
Ah.
declaring them over himself daily.
Wow.
He reached a point where he was so focused on the reality of his healed spirit that he seemingly forgot about the tumor.
Wait, he forgot. That's incredible.
It sounds wild, but that's the power of aligning your mind with the spirit.
Wow.
It's like tuning out a persistent noise until you don't even notice it anymore. Here's the kicker. Within 6 months, the tumor completely vanished.
What?
No surgery, no medical intervention.
You're telling me a change in mindset and how he saw himself spiritually led to a physical healing that dramatic? This is blowing my mind a little bit.
It highlights the connection between our perception of reality, even physical reality, and our spiritual state. It's not that the tumor wasn't real,
Right.
but by shifting his focus, Mike essentially deactivated its power over him.
Okay, that's huge.
Yeah.
It makes this whole concept feel so much bigger than just some feel-good theology. There are tangible implications for how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it raises the question, if our spirit is already perfect in Christ,
Right.
why does it feel like such a struggle to live that out?
Right. Like if we've got this nuclear reactor
Yeah.
of the spirit inside us, why are we still sweating the small stuff and letting the same old patterns trip us up?
Wommack would say it's because while our spirit is instantly transformed, our soul, our mind, will, and emotions,
Yeah.
those take time to renew. It's like having a brand new operating system, but our old mental habits are still running in the background, causing glitches.
So how we debug the system? How do we bridge the gap between the already perfect spirit and our often messy human experience?
He points to Romans 12.2, which
Yeah.
talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Okay.
This renewing is an active process of replacing old thought patterns with the truths found in the Bible.
Right.
It's like learning a new language. At first, it feels clunky and unfamiliar, but the more you immerse yourself in it, the more natural it becomes.
So how does that work practically? What does it look like to renew your mind day to day?
It's about training your mind to see yourself and the world through the lens of your spirit's reality.
Okay.
It's not a one-time download,
Right.
but daily mental reps.
Okay.
If the heart is where our spirit and soul intersect, then believing with all our heart means getting those two on the same page. And that alignment is where the real power is unleashed.
So it's not about denying our feelings or pretending everything's perfect when it's not. It's more like bringing those feelings into submission, letting the truth of our spirit inform and transform them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this has implications for how we extend grace to others.
Right.
If God sees our renewed spirit, it changes how we view our own shortcomings and those of others.
Right.
Less judgment, more understanding, and compassion. We're all in different stages of this renewal process.
That's reassuring. We all have moments where we stumble, where our soul trips us up.
right.
But because of Christ, we're no longer defined by those stumbles.
Right. We have a choice in
Yeah.
any given situation
Yeah.
to react from our soul, our fears, insecurities,
Right.
or to respond from our spirit, which is grounded in God's love and acceptance.
So if we're on board with this whole spirit, soul, body thing,
Yeah.
how does it change how we approach things like prayer or reading the Bible?
It's completely different. Remember the Bible as a mirror for the spirit.
Right.
When we read it from this perspective, it's not about gathering information or following rules. It's about letting those words speak to the deepest part of us,
Right.
where we connect with God on a spirit-to-spirit level. It becomes less about what we can do for God and more about receiving the revelation of who he already is in us.
And then we can start to see ourselves the way God sees us, not defined by past mistakes, but as new creations, full of potential and empowered to live extraordinary lives.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, if we're already these incredible creations, why does it feel so hard sometimes?
Right.
If our spirit is already perfect, why are we still wrestling with insecurity and doubt? Why do we keep getting stuck in the same old ruts?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Wommack doesn't shy away from that. He's been there himself.
Right.
He spent years trying to reconcile his own struggles with the truth of God's love.
It's like that saying, knowing and doing are two different things. We can have all the head knowledge in the world, but if our hearts aren't convinced, if our emotions aren't on board, change is tough.
Exactly. And that's where the rubber meets the road. It's not enough to just passively agree with this whole spirit, soul, body concept. We have to actively engage in the process of renewing our minds.
Right.
We have to retrain our thinking to align with the truth of who we are in Christ.
So it's about making that conscious choice day after day to live from our spirit, even when our soul wants to drag us back into old patterns. It's about choosing faith over fear, love over judgment.
Yes. And extending that same grace to ourselves that we've received from God. And remember, this isn't about achieving some distant state of perfection. It's a lifelong journey.
Right.
There will be setbacks, times when we fall back into old habits. The key is to keep coming back to the truth, keep feeding our spirits, keep renewing our minds.
I think we have this incredible inheritance waiting for us, this life of freedom and abundance, but we have to learn how to unlock it.
That's a great way to put it. And the amazing thing is this journey of transformation is available to everyone. No matter where you are on your journey, no matter how many times you've stumbled, you are loved, you are accepted, and you are empowered to live a life that reflects that.
So to wrap things up, it's not about denying our humanness, but about tapping into the source of strength we have in our spirit. It's about renewing our minds, aligning our thoughts and actions with the truth of who we are in Christ. And it's about extending that same grace and compassion to ourselves and others.
It's about embracing the incredible potential that's within each of us and stepping into the fullness of life that God has for us.
That, my friend, is worth diving deep for.